The night air was sharp with winter. Snow rested quietly along the rooftops of the Moonshadow Packhouse, glowing pale beneath the enormous silver moon hanging above the forest. Warm golden light spilled from the tall windows of the hall, and joyful howls echoed across the valley. Inside, the pack celebrated. Outside, a small girl stood alone. She could hear the laughter through the walls, the music, the stomping of boots on wooden floors, the excited shouts of warriors toasting the full moon ceremony. The scent of roasted meat drifted through the cracks of the door, warm and rich. But none of it belonged to her. The little girl hugged her thin arms around herself, trying to fight the cold wind that slipped beneath her worn dress. Snow crunched beneath her bare feet. Through the window she could see the other children running between tables while their parents laughed and called their names. No one called hers. She stayed where she was, hoping someone might notice. Hoping someone might remember she existed. The heavy wooden door opened briefly as an Omega servant stepped outside to throw a bucket of water into the snow. The woman froze when she noticed the small figure standing there. "You're still here?" the servant asked with mild annoyance. The girl nodded slowly. "I thought, maybe someone needed help." The woman sighed, already turning back toward the warm hall. "No one needs you tonight." The words were not cruel. They were worse. They were indifferent. The door shut again with a dull thud, sealing the warmth and laughter back inside. The girl looked down at the snow. She had heard those words her entire life. "No one needs you." Her chest tightened, but she refused to cry. Tears never changed anything. Instead, she slowly lifted her head and looked toward the sky. The moon hung enormous above the dark forest, glowing brighter than any lantern in the pack. For a moment, the wind fell silent. The silver light washed over the clearing and touched the girl's face. Something strange stirred in the air, something ancient and quiet. If anyone had been watching carefully, they might have noticed how the moonlight seemed to gather around the lonely child, like a silent promise. The girl whispered softly into the night, "Why doesn't anyone want me?" The forest gave no answer. But far above, the moon glowed brighter, just for a heartbeat. As if it had heard her. As if it had been waiting. And one day, that same forgotten girl would shake the entire Moonshadow Pack to its very core. Years passed, but the feeling of standing outside never truly left her. The Moonshadow Packhouse had grown larger, louder, and stronger over the years. Warriors filled the training yard with clashing blades and thunderous laughter. Young wolves boasted about their strength, their speed, their upcoming hunts. Everyone had a place. Everyone had a purpose. Everyone, except her. Lyra moved quietly through the wide kitchen, her head lowered as she scrubbed a stack of heavy plates in a basin of steaming water. The scent of herbs and roasted meat hung thick in the air, but she barely noticed it anymore. A loud voice echoed from the doorway. "Hey, useless Omega." Lyra immediately looked up. A young warrior leaned against the frame with a lazy grin. "That ale barrel in the storage room is empty. Bring another one to the training yard." "Yes," she replied softly. Before she could even dry her hands, another voice called from across the room. "And clean the tables in the dining hall when you're done." Lyra simply nodded again. Years of being the lowest-ranked Omega had taught her one important rule. Do not argue. Do not complain. Just work. As she lifted the heavy barrel and carried it across the courtyard, the winter wind brushed against her dark hair. Around her, wolves sparred in the training yard, their movements fast and powerful. Their wolves lived inside them, strong, proud, alive. Something she had never felt. Whispers followed her everywhere. "She's 18 and still hasn't shifted. I heard she doesn't even have a wolf. That's impossible, unless she's defective." Lyra kept walking. Every word landed like a small stone against her heart, but she never responded. Because part of her feared they might be right. Most shifters awakened their wolf by 16. She was 18 now. And her mind remained silent. No wolf. No instinct. Nothing. Just emptiness. As she set the barrel beside the training yard, 2 young she-wolves stepped into her path. Both were dressed in fine leather training gear, their confident smiles sharp with amusement. "Well, look who it is," one of them said. "The Ghost Omega," the other added with a laugh. Lyra lowered her gaze politely. I need to return to the kitchen. The first girl stepped closer, folding her arms. You know what tonight is, right? Lyra nodded slowly. The full moon ceremony. The night when the pack gathered under the moon, and many wolves discovered their destined mates. Excitement buzzed through the entire territory. But the she-wolf tilted her head mockingly. You shouldn't bother coming. Her friend smirked. No wolf would ever choose someone like you. Lyra didn't answer. She simply stepped around them and continued walking. But the words followed her like shadows. That evening, the pack would gather beneath the full moon. Mates would find each other. Destinies would begin. And deep inside her chest, in a place she had almost stopped believing in, a strange and restless feeling had begun to stir. A quiet pulse. Soft. Uncertain. As if something inside her had just awakened. And it was waiting for the moon. By the time the moon rose above the forest, the entire moon shadow pack had gathered in the ceremonial clearing. Torches burned in tall iron holders, their flames dancing against the dark trunks of ancient trees. The cold night air carried the scents of pine, smoke, and wolf. Lyra stood near the edge of the crowd. Exactly where she always stood. Invisible. The pack members filled the clearing in proud circles. Warriors laughing loudly, elders whispering to one another, young wolves shifting nervously as they waited for the moment everyone secretly hoped for. The moment when fate would reveal their mate. Lyra kept her hands folded tightly in front of her. She told herself she was only here to help serve drinks if needed. Nothing more. The idea of finding a mate had always felt impossible. After all, how could someone without a wolf have a destined partner? Still, something strange stirred inside her tonight. A faint warmth deep in her chest. It had started earlier in the evening and refused to fade. The pack alpha stepped forward into the center of the clearing, his deep voice carrying easily across the crowd. Tonight, he announced, we honor the moon and the bonds it reveals. Trust your instincts. Trust the call of your wolf. Cheers rose around him. Lyra lowered her eyes. The ceremony began. One by one, wolves began moving through the clearing, drawn by instincts older than memory. Some paused, confused. Others smiled as they felt the pull of fate. Then suddenly, it happened. A sharp heat exploded through Lyra's chest. She gasped softly, gripping the fabric of her dress. What? Her heart began racing. The warmth spread through her body like wildfire, tugging her forward with an invisible thread. Her breath caught. No, that couldn't be. But the pull grew stronger. Step by step, she moved through the crowd, barely aware of the curious glances around her. Her heart pounded louder with every step. Until finally, she stopped. Standing only a few feet away was a tall young man dressed in dark warrior leathers. Broad shoulders. Sharp jaw. Confident posture. Damon. The future beater of the moon shadow pack. The moment his eyes met hers, the invisible bond snapped tight between them. Mate. The word echoed through her chest like thunder. Her heart soared with sudden, overwhelming hope. All the loneliness, all the years of being unwanted. Had the moon truly chosen someone like him for her? For one fragile second, the world felt bright. But then Damon's expression changed. His eyes narrowed. His nose wrinkled in disgust. No, he muttered. The warmth in Lyra's chest faltered. Damon took a step closer, his voice cold enough to freeze the air between them. You! The surrounding wolves began to notice the tension. Whispers spread quickly through the crowd. Is she? No way. Damon's lip curled. You're my mate. Lyra's voice trembled slightly. Yes. But instead of wonder or happiness, Damon let out a sharp laugh. A cruel, mocking sound. You've got to be kidding me. The fragile hope inside her chest cracked. And in the sudden silence of the clearing, everyone waited to see what the future beater would do next. Damon looked directly at her. His eyes hard. His voice louder now. So the entire pack could hear. I refuse to accept a weak, wolfless Omega as my mate. The words hit her like a blade. And the worst part. He wasn't finished. Because the next words he spoke would shatter her heart in front of the entire pack. The silence in the clearing stretched like a drawn blade. Hundreds of eyes fixed on the two figures standing beneath the full moon, Damon, the future beater of Moonshadow Pack, and Lyra, the Omega no one wanted. For a heartbeat, Lyra could still feel the mate bond flickering weakly in her chest. A fragile thread. A final chance. Maybe he would change his mind. Maybe the shock had simply made him react harshly. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. Damon, the bond. Don't say my name. His voice cut through the night like ice. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some wolves watched with curiosity, others with open amusement. Damon stepped closer, towering over her, his expression twisted with disgust. Do you have any idea what this means for me? He said harshly. I'm the future beater. I'm supposed to lead warriors, stand beside a strong Luna, build alliances with powerful packs. His eyes raked over her simple dress, her lowered gaze. And the moon gives me you. A few wolves laughed quietly. Each sound stabbed deeper into Lyra's chest. She could feel the mate bond pulsing again, desperate and painful, as if begging not to be broken. Damon, please, she whispered. But his face hardened further. You don't even have a wolf, he continued loudly, turning slightly so the crowd could hear him better. You're weak. Useless. A disgrace to the pack. Gasps spread through the younger wolves. But no one stepped forward. No one defended her. Damon lifted his chin, his voice ringing across the clearing. I, Damon Hale, future beater of the Moonshadow Pack. The mate bond trembled violently inside Lyra's chest. Fear flooded her. No, she breathed. Reject you, Lyra, as my mate. The words crashed into her like thunder. Pain exploded through her body. A sharp, tearing agony ripped through her chest as the bond shattered. Lyra cried out, collapsing to her knees as the invisible thread between them snapped apart. It felt like something inside her had been torn away. Like her heart had been clawed open. The clearing erupted in whispers. Some wolves stared in shock. Others shook their heads. Well, that was inevitable. She should have known better. Damon stepped back as if she were something filthy on the ground. The mate bond faded completely, leaving only emptiness behind. Lyra pressed a trembling hand against her chest, struggling to breathe as tears blurred her vision. But the worst part wasn't the pain. It was the laughter. Soft at first, then louder, rolling through the crowd like a cruel wave. And yet, not everyone was laughing. At the edge of the clearing, standing slightly apart from the crowd, a tall figure watched the scene unfold. His broad shoulders were tense, his golden eyes dark with something dangerous. The alpha of Moonshadow Pack had been silent throughout the ceremony. But now, his gaze was locked on the girl kneeling in the dirt. And the fury rising inside him was impossible to ignore. Because something about what had just happened was very, very wrong. Her chest still burned from Damon's rejection, but the night offered no mercy. The forest beyond the clearing was silent, untouched by the celebration inside. Lyra stumbled along the snow-dusted path back to the pack house, each step heavy, her knees trembling from both the cold and the weight of humiliation. Inside, the pack had shifted back into its comfortable rhythm. Warriors laughed, elders discussed upcoming hunts, and young wolves whispered in corners, already repeating the story of the rejected Omega. No one spoke to her. No one offered a hand. She moved like a ghost through the hallways, her presence ignored, her existence erased once more. Plates were handed to her silently. Tasks were given with clipped commands, no encouragement, no kindness. She was invisible, but not in the safe way that invisibility might protect her. She was invisible because everyone chose to pretend she didn't matter. That night, while fetching firewood near the outer stables, a group of young she-wolves blocked her path. Their shadows stretched long in the moonlight, their smirks cruel. Well, well, one said, voice dripping mockery. Look who's still crawling around after the big rejection. Don't forget, another added. The future beater won't even glance at you now. You're nothing. The words were familiar, but tonight they cut deeper. Lyra's hands trembled as she gripped the wood, trying to steady herself. She could feel her pulse racing, not from fear, but from something else. something in her that refused to stay broken, no matter how much the world wanted her to. The first she-wolf leaned closer. Careful, Ghost Omega. You don't want anyone seeing you like this, do you? Before Lyra could reply, a violent gust of wind swept through the clearing, knocking the snow into the wolves' faces. Shadows danced unnaturally along the trees, as if the forest itself had grown restless. It was then that a wild howl echoed from the woods, long and low, reverberating through the air. The she-wolves faltered, exchanging uncertain glances, and in that moment, Lyra realized she could move past them without saying a word. But the danger wasn't over. Later that night, as she returned to the servants' quarters, she discovered the door partially open. Inside, a figure lurked, one of the pack's youngest warriors, drunk and cruel, thinking she was alone. You think you belong here, he sneered, stepping forward, shadows stretching over her fragile form. No one protects the weak. No one protects ghosts like you. Panic surged, but something deep inside Lyra sparked. Her hands tightened into fists. The warmth from earlier, the faint pulse that had drawn her toward Damon, stirred, coiling like fire in her chest. Before the warrior could reach her, a bark tore through the cold night. A flash of silver lunged between them, teeth bared, eyes blazing. Back off, a voice growled, deep and commanding. The man froze. Lyra's savior was standing just beyond the doorway now. Broad shoulders, commanding presence, golden eyes burning like molten metal in the dim light. The Alpha. The one no one dared challenge. And yet tonight, he was here, for her. The pack had abandoned her. The wolves had turned their backs. But someone powerful, had not. Something inside her stirred again. This time, it was different. It was hope. And it scared her as much as it thrilled her. The cold night had not faded, but the forest seemed to bend around him. The Alpha's golden eyes never left Lyra as he stepped closer, each movement deliberate, silent, and powerful. The other wolves froze in place, sensing the authority radiating from him. Even the wind seemed to pause. You will leave her alone, he said, his voice low but carrying easily across the clearing. The young warrior who had cornered her staggered back, swallowing hard. Yes, Alpha, he muttered, fear finally replacing his arrogance. The Alpha's gaze didn't soften. I said leave her alone. Lyra's chest still ached from the humiliation Damon had inflicted, but a spark of relief ignited deep inside. She had expected indifference, maybe a passing glance, but never this. Protection. Care. From someone who should have had no reason to notice her at all. The Alpha turned his eyes to her, and for the first time, Lyra felt them pierce through the wall she had built around herself. Why are you here? She whispered, voice trembling. Because no one else will be, he said, a single edge of steel in his tone. Not your pack. Not him. Lyra blinked, unsure how to respond. The warmth that had once pulsed faintly inside her chest, the echo of a bond that had been cruelly broken, shifted under his gaze. Her breath caught. You're different, he said softly, almost to himself, his eyes narrowing as if he were seeing something no one else could. Not weak. Not what they say you are. The words felt like sunlight through a storm. But Lyra couldn't fully trust them. She had been told her whole life that she was nothing, that she was invisible, useless. She started, but couldn't finish. The Alpha stepped closer, and suddenly, all the cold, all the fear, all the years of rejection seemed smaller under the weight of his presence. It wasn't pity she felt, it was acknowledgement. Recognition. And that recognition carried danger as well, because no one in the pack would forgive a weak Omega suddenly gaining attention from the Alpha himself. He glanced toward the training yard where the pack had gathered. They all think they're in control. They all think the rules apply to you. But I see differently. For a moment, the forest around them seemed to hold its breath. Lyra could feel the raw energy radiating from him, something ancient and commanding. Her pulse quickened, not from fear this time, but from something else. Something she wasn't ready to name. I don't understand, she murmured, voice barely audible. You will, he said, turning back to the shadows where others dared to watch. But not tonight. Tonight, you survive. And that is enough. Even as he spoke, the weight of the pack's judgment pressed in on her. Whispers of her rejection had spread like wildfire. Everyone would watch her every move now, waiting for her to fail. Yet here he was, protecting her. Lyra's heart pounded. A mixture of fear, confusion, and something dangerously close to hope flooded her chest. And somewhere deep within her, something stirred, a tiny flicker of power she had never known she possessed, responding to the presence of this alpha who shouldn't care. But he did. And that scared her more than the entire pack ever could. The days after the alpha's intervention passed in a haze of whispers and stolen glances. The pack had not forgotten Damon's humiliation of Lyra, nor had they forgiven her for being the subject of it. Everywhere she went, eyes followed, judging, doubting, mocking. But something had changed. Inside her chest, a subtle warmth pulsed, steady and insistent, unlike the fleeting pangs she had felt before. It wasn't just hope. It wasn't just fear. It was power. Something awakening, coiling beneath her skin like a silver thread lit by moonlight. It started small. She was carrying firewood one evening when the bundle suddenly felt weightless in her arms. A sharp gust of wind rattled the trees, though the night had been still. Her pulse raced, her breaths coming fast. She set the firewood down, heart hammering, and looked around. No one had seen. Yet the feeling stayed. It thrummed through her muscles, a vibration she couldn't ignore. Later, in the kitchen, a stack of plates wobbled dangerously. Before they could crash to the floor, her hands shot out without thought, steadying them. Not a single tremor. Not a single mistake. The other Omegas paused, glancing at her in surprise, but she kept her eyes lowered, trying not to notice the heat in her veins. That night, she ventured outside to the moonlit clearing. The frost under her feet glimmered, the silver glow of the full moon bathing the forest in ethereal light. She lifted her face to it and let herself feel the pulse of the moon, the wind in the trees, the heartbeat of the forest itself. And then she heard it. A low hum, almost a vibration in the air. Her wolf, her real wolf, was whispering to her. Not in words, but in feeling. A promise. A warning. A fire that had been lying dormant all these years. She gasped and stumbled backward, clutching her chest. The warmth was stronger now, surging, almost alive. She closed her eyes and tried to calm it, tried to ignore the fear creeping in, but it would not be denied. A shadow fell across her, pulling her from her reverie. "You're feeling it, aren't you?" She turned. The alpha stood there, tall and imposing, golden eyes gleaming with interest, and something else. Concern. Curiosity. She started, but no words came. "I've been watching," he said quietly, stepping closer. "You're stronger than anyone suspects. Not because of what you've been told or what you've endured, but because it's in your blood." "Blood?" she whispered, voice trembling. "Yes," he said, his gaze sharp. "Something in you awakens under the moon. Something they've all ignored. Something they were afraid of without even knowing why." Lyra felt the warmth flare in response, like the moon itself had heard his words and stoked the fire inside her. Her wolf, a true wolf, was stirring. And with each pulse, each thrum of power, she realized something terrifying and exhilarating. She wasn't weak. She had never been weak. And the alpha, who shouldn't care about an omega like her, was the only one who had seen it. The forest whispered around them, leaves trembling in the wind, shadows shifting, and for the first time in her life, Lyra felt unstoppable. But power like this came with danger. And someone, or something, was already waiting to challenge it. The next morning, the pack was buzzing with gossip. Lyra moved quietly through the halls, carrying trays of food, feeling eyes on her at every turn. Whispers followed her, sharp and venomous. "The alpha is protecting her. Why?" She kept her head down, but the warmth of her newfound strength still thrummed beneath her skin. It gave her courage, though she didn't dare show it. Not yet. Then she felt it, the heavy weight of his presence behind her. "The alpha. You've been working too hard," he said, his voice low, commanding. "Stop. Rest." Lyra froze. I can't," she whispered. They'll judge you," he interrupted, stepping closer, his golden eyes unreadable. "Let them. They have no power over you." Her chest tightened. His words, so simple, carried a weight she had never known. Not even Damon's rejection, nor years of neglect, had ever made her feel seen like this. "You don't have to hide, Lyra," he said, his voice dropping slightly, rougher, almost intimate. "Not from me." She swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. Every instinct screamed caution. The Alpha was untouchable, commanding, dangerous. And yet, he had chosen her, protected her. The pack's whispers grew louder, but he ignored them. He had never spoken to her like this, never acknowledged her as more than the ghost Omega in the corner. "Why are you helping me?" Lyra asked softly, barely audible. His jaw tightened. "Because it's right. Because no one else will. And because you're not what they say you are." Her heartbeat surged. The warmth inside her responded, like a fire fanning higher at his words. Her wolf, hidden all these years, stirred faintly at the sound of his voice. For the first time, she realized, protection wasn't just physical. It was attention, acknowledgement, validation. And every glance he gave her, every step he took to shield her from cruelty, was dangerous. For him, and for her. Days passed, each moment with him sharpening the tension between them. She caught him watching her, sometimes lingering just long enough to make her heart pound, his gaze unreadable. He never touched her, at least, not openly, but every small act of protection, every glance, every word, spoke volumes louder than any confession. They were dancing on the edge of something forbidden. And both of them knew it. One evening, as snow fell thick and silent around the packhouse, he appeared beside her while she fed the younger Omegas. "You're stronger than you realize," he murmured, leaning close enough that she could feel the warmth of him through her coat. "They won't admit it. But I do. I see everything." Her pulse raced, and she looked away, cheeks burning. I don't know how to be strong," she whispered. "You'll learn," he said softly, a rare softness in his tone. "And I'll be here. Whether the pack likes it or not." The weight of the forbidden connection settled over them like the snow outside, heavy, dangerous, and undeniable. Lyra knew two things for certain. She was no longer invisible. The Alpha, the man who shouldn't care, was now watching and protecting her. And that protection would either save her or destroy them both. The library of Moonshadow Pack was old and heavy with the scent of parchment and dust, a place the Omegas rarely visited. But tonight, under the flickering glow of lanterns, the Alpha led Lyra through rows of towering shelves, his golden eyes sharp and unreadable. "We need to know the truth," he said simply, voice low and steady. "About you. About your bloodline." Lyra's hands trembled slightly as she followed him. Each step toward the old archives felt like stepping into another world, a place where secrets waited, wrapped in shadow and silence. "Why now?" she asked, hesitant. "Why do you care?" He paused, pulling a thick, leather-bound volume from a high shelf. "Because what I'm about to show you will change everything. And because you deserve to know who you are before the pack decides for you." She swallowed hard, a knot of fear and anticipation twisting in her chest. The pages were brittle, filled with faded ink and intricate symbols, the handwriting of wolves long gone. He flipped through them with practiced care until he stopped at a page that made her breath catch. "Here," he said, pointing. "Look." Lyra leaned closer. Names, dates, and symbols she didn't fully understand stared back at her. And then she saw it, a mark, a lineage, a connection to something ancient and powerful, the lunar wolf bloodline. Wolves thought extinct, whispers of a line of Omegas who had shaped packs and altered destinies centuries ago. Her chest tightened. I'm. "Yes," the Alpha said, eyes never leaving hers. "You are the last of that line. That is why the pack rejected you. They feared it. Feared you might awaken something they couldn't control." Lyra's hands shook. Rejection, humiliation, invisibility, it all began to make sense. Her ostracization wasn't random. It was a deliberate attempt to erase her. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" she whispered, voice breaking. "All these years, why?" "Because the truth is dangerous," he said softly, a shadow of anger flickering in his eyes. "Because power like yours changes everything. And fear blinds even the wisest wolves." The weight of it all pressed down on her. She had been treated like nothing, and yet inside, something ancient had been waiting, silent, patient, growing stronger with every insult, every rejection. Her pulse throbbed, the warmth inside her now surging like a living thing. She could feel her wolf stirring, responding to the revelation, coiling with power and anticipation. The alpha's gaze softened, just slightly, revealing a rare vulnerability. You're not weak. You never were. And the pack that turned its back, they will have to face the truth soon enough. Lyra's breath came fast. She felt both fear and exhilaration. The rejection that had once crushed her now seemed almost trivial in the face of what she truly was. The fire in her chest blazed brighter. She was no longer just the invisible Omega. She was a force. A legacy. And with the Alpha standing beside her, aware of her power, aware of her destiny, she realized something else. Someone powerful, someone who shouldn't care, did care. And together, they might just defy everything the pack had tried to bury. The next morning, the forest was alive with unease. Wolves moved cautiously, sensing tension in the air that had nothing to do with the biting cold. The Moonshadow pack was unsettled, though none dared speak the reason aloud. It wasn't until the first horn of warning shattered the morning stillness that the truth revealed itself. A rival Alpha had arrived. Broad-shouldered, his dark coat shimmering in the pale light of dawn, his golden eyes sharp and cold, he stepped into the clearing like a storm incarnate. "I am Kale of the Iron Fang Pack," he announced, his voice carrying over the snowy ground. "And she belongs to my territory." Lyra froze. Her breath caught in her chest. Kale's words were more than a claim, they were a threat. Every wolf in the clearing shifted uneasily, the Alpha of Moonshadow standing rigid beside her, jaw tight, eyes burning with restrained fury. "You're mistaken," the Alpha said, his voice calm but lethal. "She belongs to Moonshadow." Kale's laugh was low, mocking. "She's of the lunar bloodline. My pack has rights to her lineage. I will take what is mine." The tension rippled outward, whispers spreading like wildfire. Even the most loyal Moonshadow wolves looked uncertain. Fear and doubt had crept into their ranks ever since Lyra's true identity had been revealed. Some dared to question whether the Alpha could protect her. Lyra's heart pounded violently. The warmth inside her, her wolf, her power, stirred sharply, responding to the threat. She felt it now, the surge of strength that had been dormant for so long, rising in defiance of those who would claim her. The Alpha stepped in front of her, placing a protective shadow between her and Kale. "No," he said, simple and absolute. "She stays." Kale's eyes narrowed. "Then you force my hand." A ripple of tension swept through the clearing. Warriors from both sides shifted uneasily. The faint pulse of fear mingled with adrenaline as the rival Alpha sized up his opposition. Lyra felt her chest tighten. She should have been terrified. She should have cowered. But instead, she felt something else. Power. Recognition. Her wolf stirring and calling to her strength, demanding it be acknowledged. "You don't know what you're dealing with," the Alpha whispered, not moving his gaze from Kale. His hand brushed hers for a fraction of a second, a fleeting touch that sent a current through her. "She's more than you think." Kale's lip curled, but before he could respond, murmurs ran through the pack. The elders had discovered the ancient records, and now the whispers of Lyra's bloodline spread faster than wildfire. Fear turned to awe, or turned to hesitation. The girl they had mocked, the ghost Omega, was no longer weak. The rival Alpha's confidence wavered, just enough for the Alpha to seize the moment. "Back away," he commanded, his voice echoing through the trees. "She is under my protection. Any harm to her, and you answer to me." Kale hesitated, and for a heartbeat, the forest held its breath. Lyra's pulse raced, the fire of her hidden strength coursing through her veins. The pack had turned its back on her once, but now everyone could see, the Omega they had rejected was no longer powerless. And the danger was only beginning. The forest was silent, but the tension was palpable. Wolves from both packs had gathered at the edge of the clearing, their ears twitching, bodies coiled like springs. Every muscle in the Alpha's body was taut, his golden eyes locked on Kale across the snow-dusted ground. Lyra stood close behind him, trembling slightly, but not from fear. The fire inside her, her wolf, stirred with every heartbeat, aware of the looming confrontation. Kale stepped forward, voice sharp as the chill wind. Hand her over. She belongs to my pack. You have no right to defy me. The alpha's jaw tightened. She is under my protection. I make the rules here. Then you start a war, Kale sneered, lifting his chin. One that could destroy both our packs. The words struck the alpha like an arrow. His mind raced, weighing options that should have been impossible. If he refused Kale's demand, blood would spill. Friends, soldiers, innocents, both packs would pay. But if he gave her away, he would abandon the girl no one else had protected. The thought made his chest ache. Lyra sensed the storm inside him. Her pulse quickened, warmth flaring in response to the danger, and to the unspoken emotions radiating from him. The bond between them, fragile but undeniable, throbbed beneath the surface. You don't have to do this alone, she whispered, stepping forward just slightly. He glanced at her, eyes darkening. This is not your battle to fight. Yes, she said, voice stronger than she expected. But you've been protecting me. And if it comes to war, I'm not running. Not anymore. The alpha's gaze softened for a fleeting moment, the golden light flickering with something more than strategy. Something human, something tender, something dangerously close to desire. Kale laughed, a low, dangerous sound. Decide quickly. The longer you hesitate, the more weakness your pack shows. The alpha inhaled sharply, weighing the impossible choice. He could see it clearly. War or protection. Politics or heart. Duty or desire. Every option carried a cost too heavy to bear. And yet, he looked at Lyra. The girl who had been abandoned, ridiculed, and rejected. The girl whose wolf stirred with raw, untamed power. The girl whose courage and bloodline could change everything. His jaw set, eyes flashing with resolve. No, he said, voice carrying over the clearing like a thunderclap. She stays. Any attack on her, and I will answer with my pack. And my fury. Kale's eyes narrowed. So be it. A tense silence fell. Both sides held their breath, waiting for the first strike. But the alpha didn't move toward conflict, not yet. Instead, he subtly shifted his stance, positioning himself between Lyra and Kale, radiating an unspoken promise. I will not let anything happen to you. Lyra felt a surge of heat in her chest. Not fear, not panic, but strength. The bond between them pulsed, the energy of their connection mingling with the awakening power inside her. She had been rejected, humiliated, and ignored. But now, standing beside the alpha who refused to abandon her, she felt the first flicker of triumph. War might be looming. Betrayal might be waiting in the shadows. But one thing was certain, she was no longer powerless. And the alpha, dangerous, untouchable, and forbidden, had chosen her. The forest held its breath. Snowflakes swirled, wind whispered through the trees. And deep inside her, Lyra knew that whatever came next, she would no longer be invisible. The night was alive with tension, every shadow in the forest deepened by the glow of the moon. Kale's warriors circled the clearing, their low growls echoing through the trees. The alpha of Moon Shadow stood firm in front of Lyra, his golden eyes blazing, muscles coiled and ready for any attack. Lyra's heart raced. Fear mingled with something she had never felt before, anticipation, power, a raw awareness of the strength that had been dormant inside her for years. She felt it now, not as a whisper, but as a surge, calling to her wolf, her bloodline, her destiny. Kale lunged first, sharp claws flashing in the moonlight. The alpha moved to intercept, but it was Lyra's instincts that flared first. A roar erupted from deep within her chest, primal and commanding, echoing through the trees. The wind seemed to shiver at the sound, snow swirling in a vortex around her. Everyone froze. Even the rival alpha. Lyra felt her body shift, her senses heightening, her vision sharpening. Her hidden wolf had awakened fully, luminous eyes glowing like silver in the moonlight, fangs bared, strength coursing through every muscle. The girl who had been rejected, humiliated, and invisible was gone. In her place stood something ancient, powerful, and unstoppable. Kale stumbled back, eyes wide with disbelief. What is this? The alpha didn't speak. He simply stepped closer to Lyra, letting her aura of power mingle with his own. Together, they radiated dominance, protection, and unyielding fury. Lyra's senses picked up every movement, every heartbeat, every breath, every intention in the clearing. The rival warriors hesitated, unsure how to attack what they had assumed was weak. The tables had turned. "Stay behind me," the Alpha growled, his hand brushing hers, an electric spark that tethered them together. But Lyra didn't need protection anymore. She could feel the power in her veins, flowing like molten silver, fierce and wild. With a single, controlled motion, she lunged, her claws slicing through the air, forcing Kale's warriors to retreat. The forest echoed with the clash of forces, the wind, the roars, the snaps of ice and snow underfoot. And through it all, the pack watched in awe. The Omega they had scorned, mocked, and abandoned was not only alive. She was more powerful than any of them had dared to imagine. Kale's own stance faltered under the overwhelming presence of the awakened Omega and the Alpha beside her. He had underestimated her, dismissed her, and it was his mistake. Lyra stepped closer to him, every movement graceful, lethal, and sure. Her wolf roared in tandem with hers, a declaration that she was no longer to be trifled with. Her bloodline, thought extinct, had risen again. The rival Alpha's pride shattered in a heartbeat. The pack, witnessing the display, fell silent, awe and fear mingling in their expressions. And through the storm of snow and power, the Alpha of Moonshadow reached for her, brushing a strand of hair from her glowing face. His golden eyes softened, filled with something he had never let anyone see before, admiration, awe, and something more dangerous, more intimate. "You were never weak," he whispered, voice low and almost reverent. "Not once." Lyra's chest rose and fell rapidly. The warmth in her body was not just power, it was triumph, freedom, and recognition. She had been invisible. She had been rejected. She had been nothing. Now, she was everything. And she would never be invisible again. The forest was silent now, the echoes of battle fading into the night. Snow fell gently, softening the aftermath of the chaos, and the Moonshadow pack gathered, their eyes wide with awe and reverence. Lyra stood in the clearing, her chest still humming with the rhythm of her fully awakened wolf. The power that had been denied, dismissed, and feared now radiated from her like moonlight itself. Pure, unstoppable, undeniable. The Alpha of Moonshadow stepped forward, golden eyes locking onto hers with a weight that made her knees weak and her heart race. Around them, the pack seemed to hold its collective breath. "You have seen her strength," he said, voice calm but charged with authority. "The girl you all rejected, the Omega you thought weak, is the Luna of this pack." Whispers ran through the crowd, all mingling with disbelief. Wolves who had scorned her now bowed slightly, a recognition of power and destiny that could not be denied. Lyra's pulse throbbed as she looked at him. Every moment, the rejection, the humiliation, the years of invisibility, had led to this. And now, standing before the Alpha who had never abandoned her, she understood what had been stirring inside her all along, the mate bond. The Alpha extended his hand slowly, deliberately, toward her. "Lyra," he murmured, the single word carrying more weight than anything she had ever heard. "I claim you. As my mate. As my Luna. As the one who stands beside me in strength and heart." Her breath caught, and for a heartbeat, time itself seemed to pause. The bond pulsed in her chest, warm and fierce, connecting them in a way that no rejection, no betrayal, and no fear could ever sever. The power, the love, the destiny, all converged in that instant. "Yes," she whispered, her voice steady despite the tears glistening in her eyes. "I'm yours." A soft, commanding growl rolled through the Alpha's throat, low and satisfied, as if even his wolf approved the declaration. Around them, the pack lowered their heads in respect, acknowledgement, and perhaps a touch of fear. They had once ridiculed the girl they thought invisible. Now, they knelt before the power and authority she embodied. Lyra's hand reached for his, and the moment their fingers touched, a surge of energy flared between them, bright and consuming. The mate bond, broken once by cruelty and ignorance, had rewritten itself stronger than ever, perfected by trials, strengthened by pain, and sealed in triumph. Kale and his warriors had retreated, defeated not just by the Alpha, but by the revelation of her power, her bloodline, and the bond they could not break. The rival Alpha's claim had been nullified in the face of destiny itself. Lyra lifted her head, eyes shining under the moonlight. She had been rejected, abandoned, and doubted. But now, she was claimed. Recognized. Powerful. Loved. The Alpha pulled her close, their foreheads touching, breaths mingling in the cold night air. "You are mine," he whispered, and it was both a promise and a vow. And for the first time in her life, Lyra believed it. She was no longer the girl no one protected. She was the Luna. The mate. The power awakened. The bond rewritten. And together, they would rule, unbreakable, unchallenged, unstoppable. The forest held its breath one last time as the moon shone down, silver and eternal, blessing the union of the Alpha and the girl who had once been invisible. And in that light, the girl who had been rejected became the most powerful woman in the territory. The mate bond was complete. Their destiny sealed. The future of the pack, and of their hearts, was hers to claim.